Welcome to the Histories of Northamptonshire podcast series, and this episode number 67. Recorded on location, each episode tells the story of one of the many and varied objects which are the focus of the exhibition A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects. The exhibition runs at the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery between the 20th of September 2025 and February 2026. Selected by local individuals, heritage groups and the museum's own curators, each object tells a different story from the county's past. And so, to our guest for this episode.
Well, I'm Peter Perkins. I'm from Northamptonshire Industrial Archaeology Group. I got interested in industrial history about 40 years ago, and for the last 20 odd years I've been secretary of NIAG.
Peter, what is the object we're talking about now?
It's a copper ball or globe. It was manufactured by Airflow Streamlines, a company in Northampton who made body panels for motor cars. Quite why they manufactured it is lost in the mist of time. It was made in about 1954.
And this ball, for a period of time, sat atop a very well-known landmark in the centre of Northampton.
Indeed it did. It was on top of the old fountain that stood in the market square from 1863 right up until 1962.
Why was there a fountain in the market square? And I ask the question immediately after Northampton has just installed a new water feature. Not the first by any means.
No. I mean, there has been a fountain of some sort for many years, even back before the 19th century. This latest one was put up to commemorate the marriage of Prince Albert to Princess Alexandra of Denmark. It was promoted by a man called Samuel Isaac, who worked supplying boots and shoes and other clothing to the Civil War in America. And he offered to pay for the fountain because he wanted to become a Member of Parliament for Northampton. He never did succeed, but that was the reason he put the money up to have it made.
But this particular fountain, they're not the things that you buy off shelf. This is very much something of Northampton.
Indeed. It was designed and manufactured by Barwell & Co., who had a foundry in Bridge Street, Northampton. They were on the site that's now covered by the Carlsberg Brewery.
That was iron, and Northampton had a number of foundries and blast furnaces through the periods of time. I remember RSM casting just on the other side of the River Nen. This fountain stayed in situation for quite some time when it was first inaugurated.
Yes, I mean, when it was originally put up, it had a light on the top, which was a large sort of 4-foot diameter glass and iron lantern. But very quickly we understand that it couldn't be used any further because they had trouble lighting it. And so it was then very quickly replaced by a much smaller gas lamp between sort of about 1870, 1880 and about 1930. In 1930, they had 4 suspended lanterns. And then for some reason in 1954, they decided to get rid of all the lanterns and replaced it with this copper ball or globe.
They kept messing around with it.
Yes, only the top, I understand. There were complaints at various times that bits of the fountain fell off. How true that is, I don't know. In 1962, the town council decided to demolish it. According to the stories at the time, it took 6 men, a crane and blowtorch to demolish it, and it took several days.
It sounds as though it was a very ornate accompaniment to one of the oldest market squares in the country. Do we know what the public's reaction to it being installed was?
I think it was mixed, is the best thing you can do. There were certainly some people who liked it, but there were some people who slated it.
The copper ball itself, this is a hollow copper ball, I take it?
Yes, it's made out of sheet copper, and it's virtually a complete globe. It's just got a flange on the bottom, which allowed it to be fixed to the top of the central pillar on the fountain.
Did it survive to the end of the fountain itself?
As far as I'm aware, yes. When they did demolish the fountain, it went back to Airflow Streamlines and apparently sat in their offices as a plant holder for a few years until in 2004 it was donated to the museum.
It's a sort of fall from grace, really and truly, from something that thousands upon thousands of people would have seen and appreciated to, frankly, in the corner of a room holding a plant.
I mean, it was a relatively plain copper ball, unlike the rest of the cast iron structure of the fountain, which was quite elaborate in its design. The Victorians were known for their high Victorian styling, and apparently this is supposed to have been built in a 16th century Italian style.
So as a piece of Victorian design, therefore, it was symptomatic of the Victorian age?
Of the Victorian era. That's very true, yes.
And elsewhere in the exhibition, we've got lumps of rail track, and if it wasn't for the Victorians, we might still have Northampton Castle. That sort of technological approach, are we talking about sophistication in the centre of Northampton?
Yes, I would say, it was certainly an artistic object. It wasn't a functional object in that sense, as much of Barwell & Co.'s other production was. I mean, they produced stench pipes and that sort of thing, but they did produce a lot of decorative ironwork, and around the southern half of England there is some remarkable work. Barwell & Co. made the cast iron staircase that's currently in Rest Park, a stately home the other side of Bedford, for example. So there are lots of examples of this decorative ironwork.
So we have instances of people wanting to make their mark on the county town and perhaps write their family names into history, yes, which is where the origins of this fountain come from. Yes. What's your reaction to the fountain, which is now no longer with us? Was it a bit of frippery, as I mentioned, or was it a serious statement for Northampton in the market square?
Yes, I think it was a serious statement. It was an example, a good example, of the design and engineering capabilities of the local iron founders, of which Barwell was just one. I mean, you've got people like Holchin who produced traction engines as well. But it's a shame it went. There is, however, another fountain that still exists, which is identical. When I was looking at Barwell, I came across a Barwell & Co. catalogue dated the 1860s. On the front page was a diagram of the fountain, and it said, manufactured by Barwell & Co. and since erected in India and England. So I then spent quite a bit of time looking online for a fountain in India, and eventually I found one on an archive page on the Radio Northampton's website. Jonah Cotness had recognised that this was the fountain she walked past when she was going to school in Mumbai in the 60s.
So twin sisters or twin brothers, depending on how you take it. One in the middle of the county town, one in Mumbai in India.
Yes. But furthermore, it is now in a museum in Mumbai. I emailed the museum, asked them to send me some pictures. They duly did. They told me a bit about the fountain. And I'd met up with Aaron and Jonah Cotness. We swapped notes about the fountains. About 6 months later, I had an email from some engineers in Mumbai. They were dismantling the fountain in order to restore it and put it back in the original position where it had been back in 1867. They found some numbers on the fountain. Could I help them? Well, I'd been down to the National Archives at Kew and found the records of when the fountain was registered in 1863. The registration number was 171196, which was the numbers that were found on the fountain. So we knew it was the identical fountain. I was able to send them an original drawing from the National Archives, and they were able to use this when they were restoring the fountain to get it back into one piece.
Well, Northampton's loss is perhaps India's gain. We do, however, have an echo, and so for this particular object, the copper ball made by Airflow Streamlines is what has made it into the exhibition.
It's the one tangible item that still exists to remind us of the fountain.
Echoes of the past, of course. Still, there is a water connection to the market square, and you can see that if you go and have a look any day of the week from now on. And it's great that this particular item still exists to tell the story of a fountain which almost managed to survive for a century, but not quite. Peter, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Histories of Northamptonshire podcast. If you would like to find out more about the objects or listen to other episodes in the series, go to www.northamptonmuseums.com Alternatively, you can visit the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, where you can see the A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects exhibition for yourself. The Histories of Northamptonshire project is funded by Arts Council England as part of the National Portfolio Programme.